Welcome to the Payment Shed podcast, the weekly podcast that dives into the big topics, trends, and people shaping the worlds of payments, fintech, and business leadership, with your two co-hosts, myself, Grant Evans, and Justin Hanna.
Welcome to another episode of the Payment Shed podcast. I'm Grant Evans. Today I am riding solo. No Justin Hanna beside me, unfortunately, for the first time ever in 4 seasons, but I am very fortunately joined by Eduard and Boris, the co-founders and co-CEOs of Anna Money. Welcome to the podcast, guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
Can I please, just so we always kick off with our guests, just getting a little bit of introduction to who we've got on the show and your journey into fintech, which I know can obviously be a long arch for some, but where did it all start for you guys?
Oh, that was it was a long journey. Try to condense it in the short version would be we started off with the transformation of a regional bank into a digital bank, and then we refocused it into being an SME focused digital kind of online bank. That's the very short version of it.
And later we learned that that type of stuff is called fintechs. It's like my background is in development, and I was bored one day and thought, oh, why won't we add to a regular website a feature that people can actually manage their finances through the web without, special apps or whatever. And then 10 years down the road, people came up with a name for that, which is fintech. So yeah.
Yeah, I think we'll talk about the name of fintech later on, but it's kind of becoming a more unpopular term, I think, now, because it's such an established part of the ecosystem, and it's still maybe seen as this new thing that really isn't new anymore, right? So yeah, I'll ask you your opinion on that later. And I wanted to talk about the 2 CEO model, because it's not particularly common in business these days to have 2 CEOs, but obviously co-founders, it makes complete sense when you break it down that way. How have you found kind of going on that journey together and operating the kind of dual CEO model?
Now it's your turn.
All right. Yeah, well, we've been working together since 2008, I believe, yes. And doing stuff together, several businesses, growing them, selling them. But it is just in Anna that it was like officially co-CEO model. It is taxing in a way that we have to be closely synced about stuff. But then, it just gives the benefit of bunch of pairs of eyes. One CEO can be present at 2 meetings simultaneously, that type of stuff.
And I guess after 18 years, you'd probably know if you don't work well together by this point in time, right?
Well, there's always new facets and new territories, etc. But we get along. And we learned how to kind of do this together, and how to discuss things, and also things which we disagree on. It's also quite exciting, to be honest.
But both agreeable on not liking the word fintech. So that's an interesting one for me.
That's mainly
That's
my
your
thing.
personal one? Because, Anna Money could be seen as a fintech to some,
Yeah, I'm
right?
fine. I'm fine with the name.
So why then, Boris? Why is the issue with fintech as a term?
Well, labels are not always helpful. Then bunch of stuff is being called fintechs, and we've seen the evolution where something that started as a fintech and now is as boring as your couple 100-year-old banks. Then I would also distinguish that, fintech innovation is kind of put at the same bucket, but then with many fintechs, there is not much innovation there except an nice UX, and that's about it. So I think in that sense, the labels are not that helpful. And then in the end of the day, clients don't wake up with the thought, oh, I need a fintech in my life. They just need their problem solved. And in that regard, it doesn't matter where there is something that does it without the licensing background, or whether it's a traditional bank that does it or a newcomer that does it.
So how does that philosophy manifest in how you guys then design your own products for small businesses in the financial ecosystem?
Well, ideally, what we want to achieve, and we are on the journey, we are not there yet, but that's what we want to build, is a small business owner having an assistant, a companion, a partner, an employee. I don't know what a second brain,
a co-CEO.
Co-CEO. I don't know how to call it, but which is intelligent, deals with things, money, cards, bookkeeping, accounting, hiring, firing, sales, and things like that. So, and it's just for £100 a month. That is kind of our vision. That's where we are trying to evolve gradually. And from that perspective, yes, you need to be integrated with payment infrastructures and cards and payments and payment acceptances, etc. But it's more like support stuff, so it's, if people prefer to call it fintech, it's fine. But from my perspective, it's more about trying to build this assistant for a business owner who are very lonely and they're time poor and need to manage a lot of things. So having that at your disposal, I think that's what we want to achieve.
Yeah. So we're not building a fintech, but we're building something that small businesses would not be able to live without.
Yeah. It's really interesting because Lou Murray was on recently from Rails or Equals Money, and she put fintech on her shelf of shame at the end of our show because she felt as a term it was, again, being perceived the wrong way these days. So it's interesting that you guys also have that same feeling. And Eduard, you guys, I think, really are one of the first financial institutions in the UK to call itself robot ready. So let's dive into your journey with AI as a business. What does that really mean in practice?
Well, we started off with a chat interface, but it's not only the interface, but it's also the bus, the layer inside the tech architecture, which actually pulls the microservices it needs to perform a certain function. So it actually was built that way from the very beginning. It was powered by our internal, homemade ML powered kind of system, chat. But right now, the technology is much more advanced, and with LLMs being so powerful, and essentially what we're doing is we're replacing our homemade ML-based chat with LLM, and that opens up a lot of horizons which we have never kind of dreamed that would come so fast. But it also, from an architectural point of view, it's an interesting territory to explore. But essentially, what you have a reasoning layer inside of your architecture, which is actually, reasoning, can ask certain questions or pull certain information outside on the domain to perform a certain goal, and it's goal-oriented, and it's inside your tech. Not like a parallel feature or something, but it actually pulls all these services that needed to be to execute a certain function. And that is exciting. That is very powerful, sometimes too powerful. And we yet to explore what the applications of that.
That's an interesting term, isn't it? Too powerful. And I guess that leads into my next question around how you maintain accuracy and control.
Yeah, well, just even before that, by being robot ready, it's not only that we can kind of become smarter behind the scenes while still keeping the same interface for the clients. It's also that popular LLMs like ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever, they can talk to Anna. So we actually had people that would form a company from chat without leaving ChatGPT interface, but using Anna as a backend.
Okay.
So that is also possible. We had people open an account with an from ChatGPT interface. Once it has all your documents and stuff, you'll still have to do all the proper identification at any interface, but all the preparatory work might happen there. So there is also another layer of development where we all might end up there. And the question was about
like accuracy and control from you, like as you guys scale, like do you feel like that gets jeopardized at all by having that kind of LLM model in the background?
Oh, that's the bit where, for example, I can ask ChatGPT to build my tax return for me, but it is not trained on my documents. It is not trained on the specific on my previous filing history. So it would make mistakes, and actually I tried and it did. Now, with what we're building in-house, we have rigorous testing. We have kind of old school models that run on top of that and check it for accuracy. But most importantly, it's trained on proprietary data, including customers' own data that comes from previous filings, transactions, blah, blah, blah. That makes it way more accurate because it's just specialized and it has all the data feeds that are not available to regular models, which improves the accuracy. And the more quality info you have in the better is the output.
Yeah, I think that's a bit of a misconception with AI sometimes, that it is this silver bullet as well. Like you have to be giving it the right data and the right information for it to service what you need as a business, right?
Well, and also the key question, like, is it better in comparison to what? And I've had accountants make like grave mistakes, just misreading, missing the numbers, and it happens, we're all human. So in that regard, robots actually better.
And I want to reel off a couple of numbers here because these are massively impressive as well. So Eduard, auto accountant within your system automates 88% of corporation tax, 54% of VAT returns. How do you get comfortable pushing that automation so far? I mean, obviously impressive numbers, but I mean that's phenomenal data.
Well, and it's not the end of the journey. It's just the
beginning.
Look, we started with applying machine learning technologies, and we mastered those, and not displacing those, but actually augmenting those where needed or replacing where needed with reasoning models. We're actually building on top of that, but also these technologies enable us to process not just the data but the architecture of the service itself, and that brings in quite new challenges as well. Like for example, when we talk about customer data and previous filings and things like that, there's always how much do you need for a particular task to be performed? Like, do you need all of it, part of it? How do you process which part do you need? And you do it dynamically because you still maintain this conversation. So it's all these challenges which are quite new. But in answer to your question, the current technologies are capable of supporting that. But executing on it is a special task.
Today's episode is sponsored by ISX Financial. Most growing businesses end up stitching together multiple providers to run their payments and banking, leaving them exposed to cash flow, reconciliation, and even security issues. ISX Financial delivers a unified ecosystem with multi-currency accounts, online payments, real-time UK and EU transfers, and global mass payouts. Within that platform, Paid By provides Pay by Bank with real-time settlement notifications, automated reconciliation, and integrated refund management. One partner, one integration, helping your business transact with confidence. You can learn more at isx.financial. That's isx.financial. And a big thank you to the team at ISX for supporting the show.
So it's just applying this to a particular domain, which makes it particularly kind of interesting. but the technologies are there to support that. It's just that execution and application in particular domain is something that we are working on.
Has it like redefined your recruitment processes as well? Because you're looking for people, I guess, that have a really innate knowledge in this area moving forward, with it being such a core part of your proposition.
It's not so much the recruitment, but that did change a lot of things internally in terms of how we develop products, how we assess them, what kind of people do we need, how do we actually make sure that people we have really apply it in a consistent manner. That is something that was also new. Like, you've got backend developers, and then suddenly you actually tell them, well,
from tomorrow you are full stack developers.
Yeah.
and they're using Claude. It doesn't
made
have
them better workers, right?
Yeah.
It's made them more efficient. So.
Yeah.
Sometimes it does.
Yeah.
But it is a shift in mentality, because obviously there are people that want to keep doing the old ways, and we're saying, okay, but we won't be having just back-end developers and front-end developers separately anymore. Let's rewind like it was 15 years ago when there were only full-stack developers.
Yeah.
So back to basics.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
No, I like that. Let's talk about making tax digital then. From April, 850,000 people must be filing digitally under MTD. How significant a shift is that in the market?
We think it's pretty significant, and it's only the first wave that you're referring to, because there's going to be 2 more waves. So in total, there's going to be 3 million
When are they due,
businesses
the
which
next
would be
waves?
affected by that.
Are they quite fast follow-ons?
It's a yearly shift. It's a yearly wave.
Okay.
So there's going to be 3 waves. And the first one that you referred to is 850 or whatever. The estimate number of those affected is going to be. And then the next one is going to be 1 million and just under 1 million in the third year. But yeah, it's going to be a pretty significant shift. People would have to update their kind of filings on a quarterly basis and do it digitally. So yeah, it's going to be a big shift for many sole traders.
And you guys have made a pretty big decision internally that you're going to provide that service for free, the quarterly filing service forever, right? Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
That's like a bold commercial move to make as a business. What was the kind of co-founder, co-CEO chat that took place there to agree to that?
That was pretty easy, by the way. That was pretty easy.
That's one of the things we didn't fight over.
But why the decision? I mean, that's, surely that's something you could have commercialized if you wanted to.
And we think that there will be opportunities to commercialize that. But I think that the MTD part, this is the part which is, digital filing and digital records, should be free. But the conveniences on top of that might be something that you could commercialize going forward.
Okay.
Yeah, because the way the market is, people would be either forced to get an account subscription, or worse yet, to get first year free of an outdated accountancy software that they would have to figure out how to use and do everything themselves. So what we're offering is a new type of a product, new type of a monetization from our end, but in the end, it's a very lucrative offer for a client, because I mean, the stuff that needs to be free, that's actually not a rocket science, it just needs to be free. And the conveniences of having it all in one place, having the visibility, having your payments linked to that. Okay, that's a different story.
And do you see MTD as an opportunity or a burden for small businesses?
I think it would feel like a burden in the initial stages of rollout,
because they're used to what they're used to. And
yeah, it's always this switching behaviors and kind of paradigms and habits, which is always uncomfortable. Going forward, we'll see. I mean, to some extent, look, this year-end couple of weekends spent on, putting the records together, etc., talking to an accountant and, things like that.
And realizing that you just don't have enough cash to pay what you do. That's not healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So spreading it throughout the year probably would make it a little less stressful and painful at the end of the year.
And the
Theoretically, at
conveniences
least.
of just putting aside on a savings pot, the money that you would need to pay anyways in the end of the year, just forecasting that. I think once everybody's in the groove with that, there would be way less stress and more convenience in a way.
So you say,
because you still have to do the work. I mean, it's like just, you just take care of it step by step.
but you say once everyone's in the groove, right? So we like to do this thing in financial services, don't we? Where we announce new products, there's going to be a better way forward, and then we launch it to market with a date. There's always a hard date. Sometimes that date shifts, but do you think the market is ready for this, or is there going to be a lot of confusion and kerfuffle? Obviously, you guys are ahead of the curve in terms of helping, with MTD, but are everyone else in the market ready or not? Or is it going to be a bit chaotic this year?
I think it's going to be chaotic.
Yeah.
As it always is.
Yeah.
When some big things happen, there's going to be some chaos involved, but I think it would settle down, and it's going to take maybe a couple of quarters to settle down. But again, it is my kind of personal view, because I think that there's going to be a lot of messaging noise, marketing noise about people would try to kind of offer products and services using this kind of shifts. So it's going to be a bit confusing as well for people. So I think it's going to be a bit of chaotic transition.
But there's always opportunity in the chaos, right? So I presume you guys are building a good marketing campaign around this, and
we'll
getting everyone
see.
ready.
We'll see. We hope so.
Yeah.
We'll see. Yeah.
Good stuff. So I wanted to talk about a really interesting story of you guys as well. Obviously, Wirecard is known very well to our listener network. Now, there's a story about yourselves from 2020, and obviously previously, working with Wirecard as you were, you decided to go live on YouTube. Is that correct? Is this a true story?
It is
Yes.
a true story.
Can you tell us the story, what happened there, and how it came about? The
With
decision, I guess.
Wirecard.
Not with Wirecard. I think we know how Wirecard came about by now.
It was one of those situations when it was Friday, and we do have a demo day on Fridays where people kind of present what they've been doing for a week or a sprint, and we also use this opportunity to announce things, etc. So it was one of those things when I started talking about the new strategy, and then I was getting these text messages from Boris saying that, okay, there's something going on, just look at this.
Finish the speech.
And I was like, I was annoyed, honestly. And I was like, why is he sending me these messages? And then I followed the link, and then there was this FCA announcement, and I just realized that, just the screen says that,
We don't have a backend anymore.
So we don't have a backend anymore. And it's and it's in the middle of this,
Company inspiring, speech.
Strategy, strategy speech and everything. So I cut it short, and we went into this damage liquidation exercise. But there's how do you? I mean, it's total uncertainty, and it's all blacked out. You can't do anything. Customers are crazy for obvious reasons, and some of them were kind of not even knowing. They don't follow the FCA news and business news, etc. They may come to their account at 5 p.m. and not knowing what happened, and so it was a mess. It was chaotic, and people were asking very kind of simple questions. What happened? How am I affected? What's going to be next? How can I get my money? As simple as that. So, and we just thought that probably the best way to address it is being, honest, transparent, and, accessible. And so we decided, okay, what's the best way to talk about it. And we said, okay, let's set up a streaming session. And we set up a streaming.
Because that wasn't like somewhere in the midst of the lockdown or between the lockdowns. I think it was still like a heavy lockdown.
But still, it humanizes you guys as leaders of the business, right? Because it's easy to put out a statement in that moment, like a lot of companies would do. So I think it's quite unique to have made that decision to kind of.
Well, and we were taking questions as they were coming,
Yeah, but it was
streaming.
also, we did it on, I don't remember, was it Saturday or Sunday, but one of the weekend days. But in between, we were talking to some of our investors and, shareholders at the time. And we suggested to them that we buy out all balances, customer balances. So essentially unfreeze customer balances and instead would have claims against, safeguarded accounts with Wirecard. So it took quite a lot of discussion internally, because they were
in the legal counsel, because it's not as straightforward. To run an operation like that.
So we were talking to lawyers. We were talking to, our shareholders had their own lawyers and company lawyers, and
we were trying to get some information from Wirecard, do they actually have the money or not?
So it was
where is that money and that type of simple
we all know
questions
now, don't we? But yeah, I mean, and how quickly did you manage to? I mean, that's obviously a big financial decision to buy out those balances, like you talk about. But how quickly were you able to go and find a new provider? And obviously, how has that then changed your strategy around like a single supplier setup? Did you decide to go to a multi-supplier setup off the back of that? Build yourself? Like, what was the journey from that point of going, this can never happen again? Like, this has happened. Even in early ISOs in the card payment industry, I know stories of acquirers that turned off ISOs and stopped paying them commission and nearly put them out of business overnight. And then ISOs started going to lots of different acquirers and having 8 acquirers sitting behind their business, right? So what was the next step from, okay, Wirecard doesn't exist anymore. Where do we go from here?
Well, we were considering like contingency plans before, and one of those, even prior to what happened to Wirecard, was Railser. We were playing in the sandbox, etc. So we just accelerated this route at that point in time, and that was a decision to kind of to move to Railser. But then, and that was before they actually made this deal with some of the transfer of assets from Wirecard to Railser. So we ended up with 2 parallel backends. One was migrated and the one was set up newly. So we ended up with 2 sort codes, which was quite unusual for an operation of our size at the time. And 2 card backends. So it was a bit confusing. So we had in a month's time, many customers had 2 accounts essentially with us.
Fair enough. And then, from that experience and how you've then gone down the Rails route, obviously, like you stayed with a single supplier setup then, or did you then get a contingency in place?
And there is no true contingency in this business.
Yeah.
It just you either keep some of the clients on one setup, another clients on another setup, and then another one is your ability to switch fast.
Yeah.
But then it's also the choice between 8 bad suppliers and 1 good one.
And managing multiple relationships,
yes.
multiple integrations.
So it's not about the number of suppliers. It's about managing the contingency risk as a whole in the end of the day. And yes, we are constantly thinking about it.
And then the next, so that's looking to the past as we pivot towards the future, right? You guys obviously have scaled towards that, or you're scaling towards that 100 million plus turnover bracket, which is always a really poignant moment for businesses and their growth journey. Your ambition is to become the platform businesses run everything from. I guess this is a question for both of you, but what does that practically mean to Anna Money?
You mean product-wise or?
Yeah, from a business operational point of view,
mm-hmm.
Anna Money could service multiple things for businesses moving forward, right? It can help them to strip out other platforms where they're utilizing different products and services. That's the ambition for you guys, right?
Yes, the ambition is to essentially, how would I say this properly? The assumption, or the thinking is that people are using something, but the type of customers we serve, the lower end of the market, in most cases they don't use anything at all. So essentially, it's actually onboarding them on using us versus going from something that they're using in the past. There would be some people who would be switching, etc., but the majority would be, they're just not using anything at all. And for them, we want to become a platform which is supporting them in, hiring, payroll, sales support, money, cards, spend management. So it's like one-stop shop. That's what we want to be, and where it's not just functionally, but it's also, it's not only the functions that you actually, or jobs that you do, but the orchestrations of these jobs, like scenarios which are cross-functional. Like you hire someone, but the next day you need to set up payroll for this person, right? Like it's interconnected. So you can actually do it as one single scenario, right? And, or much more simple things like, if you run a project, you sign the contract, and then and you're waiting for down payment or, something like that, or, first payment, and then you start paying your suppliers to do this. So all these kind of cross-functional scenarios where you have contracts, you have commercial relations, but also payments or accounting or documentation or whatever, and orchestration of these scenarios is an important bit.
And it can be difficult to be best in class in all those things, right? When you're running multiple product lines.
Yes, but with the type of customer in mind, who is particular, we define that our customer is, if a business owner uses our product themselves, that's our customer. If they delegate someone to use this product, probably not. Not our customer.
Yeah.
So it's typically less than 10 employees and people who actually, do all these jobs themselves. Yeah. And for these people, simplicity, time it takes.
And those
skills.
SMBs will sometimes have, you talked about payroll, all these different things, like they'll have 5 or 6 different platforms sometimes doing all these different things.
Exactly. Right? And the way the platforms develop, how do you become a better platform? You just keep adding features. And what happens to a product when there are a bunch of features and the menu becomes complicated? It becomes unusable. It's not simple anymore. You have to invest your time in like, okay, where is that located? How do I do that? How do I turn that on? How do I adjust it for my particular use case? And then you have to marry all these systems between them.
Yeah, you have to integrate all of them.
So being best in class is not being the most complicated.
Yeah.
It's being the most integrated.
I think sometimes there's platforms that have added all of these different products and services as well. And what the actual end user really wants is to be shown the things that are relevant to their business, right? Like, do I need all 10 things on that dashboard?
They don't.
Or do you know that I only need these 4 things because of the type of business I am, the sector I'm in, and that's what you're therefore going to present? And you can use AI probably to determine
and
some
most
of that.
Of the stuff could be populated, there could be suggestions. We will know that, once you want to hire an employee, okay, you have a contract, you need to register for the payee, but then you actually have to pay a salary. And sometimes it's like 3 different products. Well, why? But it's the same workflow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also the other thing is that businesses only grow up in terms of customers. They rarely, if ever, go to smaller customers. We start very low, and that's on purpose. Because if we master that, we can always go up.
Yeah.
They cannot go down.
Yeah, I get that. Makes a lot of sense.
And therefore, and this segment of customers, the nano businesses, the kind of the young businesses, they're the most price sensitive. they're most difficult to market. And if you master that with profitable unit economics and operating at scale, you can
Like
always
we
go
did.
up.
Yeah. And Australia, obviously, you guys have grown via acquisition in Australia. Why did you choose that particular market for the sort of next step in your new regional growth journey?
We just got a license there today as well.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It's the most similar market to the UK. I mean, in terms of regulatory frameworks, market infrastructures and, things like that, they're very, very similar. Like for us, going into Australia is much easier than going to France. I mean, France would be different product team, marketing would be completely different. I mean, everything is going to be kind of a fork in business. Whereas in
Even
Australia,
the language,
yeah. So for us, it seemed like a, easier target, but also that means that translates into time to market, cost to market. But also it's a sizable market, half of the UK. So, like in terms of risk reward, costs and everything, we thought that the only downside is that we have now 7 a.m. Sync calls with them.
That's a world I know all too well. My boss is in Melbourne, so I'm used to pretty early morning calls as well myself. So, okay. And if we're looking beyond Australia, is there another potential market on the horizon or one you'd like to get into in the future?
Yeah, of course. I mean, we think, that is something that we would decide later. We still have some time to think about it. But the aspiration is go to the US. May not necessarily be US as, US, but maybe several states.
Yeah.
More specifically.
Well, that's like going country by country anyway, isn't
Exactly.
it?
It's sort of the same, but a bit. Yeah. So, but that's not something very, very close, but something maybe 2 years ahead.
And what are you expecting the biggest challenges to be as you guys approach that 100 million mark and you get, your growth journey's obviously been rapid. What are the challenges that come with that scale that you're operating at now?
Company is about relationships between people, how they interact between each other, how they solve problems, and growing makes these relationships a bit more strained and complicated. And managing all of that probably is the most difficult part. Some people who are good at the very start may not necessarily be the best in terms of taking it forward. The new people coming in and they need to get, on terms and, and as an old guard kind of people. So managing this transition as a set of relationships is probably one of the challenges.
I think it's good to hear that. I mean, we've talked about it on the show in the past that businesses need different people for different stages of their journey. But I think there's also people that feel they're best suited to a certain journey within an organization. And I've seen, friends, peers of mine that have decided they want to be in that startup to scale up bit of the journey or that scale up to enterprise bit, but they don't want to be in that kind of enterprise level bit, right? So we're also seeing people consciously make that decision of, do you know what, I've been on that journey, now's the time for me to go and find the next project like that.
Well, it's about individual and company-wide self-awareness, but the magnitude of task is almost like starting a new company. And we had been through scaling journeys before. It's the growth pains, but they do come with reward once you kind of go through them.
Yeah, and the other thing is that people more focused on, individuals, like you need different people or things like that. But one bit which is missing is the relationships between these people and people who are, in the company, which are coming into the company, what they bring in, how they change the dynamics. And this is, it's about the relationships more than the individuals themselves. and how you make these relationships productive, introducing new people, but also maybe some people letting go, and and just generally you have more people. We still want to maintain us as a small kind of club, sort of. We don't view ourselves like scaling a lot in terms of people's numbers, but still we're growing, and the sheer kind of complexity of the relationships and the speed of these decisions and everything is becoming an issue. And how do you manage that? How do you still maintain this agility that you had like when you started it?
Do you think, obviously, as a high adoption AI business as well, in terms of how you've utilized it, do you feel that that has significantly impacted the volume of people that you've needed to have in the organization? Because we hear stories like, Klarna talked about removing a load of staff and bringing AI in, and then they rolled that back and we went too far with it. But like, in terms of your overall headcount, do you think your utilization of that as a product and embedding it into your product has meant that you've been able to stay, lesser headcount effectively?
We'll see major impact next year, I think, but that's what we expect. But it's not about like the journey you've referred to, replace and then realizing, oh, the stuff doesn't work anymore. Let's hire people again. Because I mean, in Excel it's very easy, or in Sheets or whatever, but in reality it's not. I mean, you bring new people in, they don't know what to do, takes time to train. So we're careful in that regard, because our focus is on keeping customer happiness, but there are huge areas of business and processes that would just disappear. The stuff that we used to do, we would just need not to do it anymore.
Yeah.
And I have AI reading my Slack messages now.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
It's a more long-term, more gradual process than people think, in my view. And as a company, you may grow in areas where you may focus on one areas of application, but then you may grow in other areas. So in that sense, I think it's a more long-term mixed kind of scenario, and it's going to take like 2-3 years to actually kind of properly assess that. Like with numbers and some history behind. For now, what we're trying to do is we're trying to, in certain areas, we're trying to be a bit more mindful as to what are the options we have, and how do we prioritize those in terms of development, hiring, and maybe changing processes, etc. But yeah, that's what we try to do, just to be a bit more mindful about hiring new people, rather than just just trying to cut the headcount.
You're going the other way to Klarna, right? You're looking at where you need to add rather than where you need to take away.
Well, and that's a big thing. The way we look at it, there is a mantra. Okay, it used to be outsourcing to cheaper countries to cut costs. Now the same mentality is used. Oh, let's just move all the unhappy clients to an automated chat to cut costs. So people think of technology as a way to cut costs first. We think of technology as a way to create value. And that is a very different mentality and a very different exercise in the end of the day.
I like that.
Yeah. That's a very good point, because we had the debate at the very start, like where do we place our customer support, and people were saying, well, Revolut has it in Poland, let's do something like that. Everybody does it, but we chose a very different approach. We said no. Our customer support is part of the value creation, available 24/7, etc. It's not like call center, and therefore we need it to be based in the UK. So our customer support is UK based, and what we achieve through that is very difficult to kind of quantify, but knowing local context, understanding it better, especially when you talk about things such as fin crime and compliance, etc. I had an issue with, with one of the providers when I was trying to explain in the early days when we were opening a business account for Anna that we allocated at WeWork, and they said, well, send us a lease agreement. I said, like, it's a membership agreement. I said, like a membership. They said, no, it's a membership agreement. We need a lease agreement. It's your office, right? I said, yes, it's our office. See, it's how WeWork operates. I mean, don't you know them?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like one of our competitors, most of their compliance people are in India, right?
Yeah.
They just would never have that context.
Yeah. No, I get that. Look, so the final part of the show, guys, we have a little segment called the Shelf of Shame. We ask all of our guests to nominate something from fintech, payments, business, whatever you fancy that if you could get rid of it forever, never have to see or think about it again, what would your nominations be? Eduard, I'll go to you first.
Oh, I was hoping I would be the second.
But like,
yeah, probably. Look, it's maybe not fintech or I would say reductionist thinking is something that I would be very happy if people would put to shelf or something. Because, the way many people think and operate is that they split the issue or problem or any question into compartments and then try to analyze that. And it doesn't, and I think it's just wrong.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And that is something that I come across, and it's very logical, very kind of bulletproof, etc. It's just wrong in many cases. I mean, there's areas where it works, but in complex scenarios, it doesn't. So
fair enough. Boris, yourself?
I'll just go easy with fintech and a hype or hysteria around certain technologies or stuff, because people often think about the category, whether it's hyped or not. They think about the technology, whether it's cool or not. And too little attention is on, okay, how useful it is.
Yeah.
How is it capable to change day-to-day behavior? Is it actually making life for people that use it way better or way easier or more exciting?
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about, exciting like earning money for conferences that are dedicated to that hype.
Yeah.
But actual usefulness to the end user.
Yeah, I think hype's come up a few times. Happy to put them both on the shelf, guys. Look, thanks so much for coming in. Where can people go and find out more about Anna Money?
Just follow us on the news,
On the news, yeah.
Yes.
You're everywhere at the moment. I keep seeing the Anna Money logo, so yeah, something's working well.
Thanks.
But my daughter, she asked me a while ago, are you doing fintech? I said, yeah, that's how people refer to it. She said, many of my friends want to do fintech. I said, so is it bad or good? She said, you know what? They don't know what they actually want. They call it fintech.
Yeah, I think that's perfectly fair.
Yeah. And we don't want to be in that basket.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, thanks very much for coming on the show,
Thank
guys.
you, Brian. Thank you.
Thank you very much.